Hello there, my name's Annette with Sunbeam Fabric Art. Welcome to my channel. As I mentioned in my previous video, I did a foundation paper pieced pattern for this Merrie England block. I'll leave links in the description down below. Here you see the pattern, and it's going to make a quadrant of a square. You need 4 of those to make a finished square. Each quadrant is 12 inches finished. My idea in making the block so big is that I would only need 4 finished squares to make a small child-sized quilt. One part of the pattern covers 3 pages because it's so large. So I'm going to show you how I put these together. What I do is I take one piece and cut it in a zigzag line. There are guidelines on the pattern that show you where they should match up. Once I have that zigzag line cut, it's easy to match up the lines on both sheets of paper. Then I will simply tape those pieces together. I went ahead and printed out enough pages to make 4 of these blocks, and those will go together in one square. I like to cut out all the sections before I start sewing. As you can see by the funny colors, my printer started to run out of ink while I was printing out these patterns. Once I had all the sections cut out, I went ahead and started cutting strips of fabric to the correct length. Now the width of these strips, it's a little bit bigger on the large piece, and the black and white piece is a little bit skinnier, but I'm just using 2.5-inch strips for everything. I don't have to, but I will be able to save all the scraps from trimming down these strips. So here you see I'm going to be taking these 2.5-inch strips, making sure they're long enough to cover my entire strip, and then I'm going to cut out 4 in each size. So I'm alternating a dark blue and a lighter blue. Now, one thing I didn't take into account is that the Merrie England block, technically 2 of these triangles should go dark to dark and 2 should go light to light. I made them all the same way, and I'm going to change that later on in the video. In the pattern, you can actually see what it will look like if you use the same light, dark, or dark, light on all 4 triangles. It kind of makes an interesting optical illusion. So I may redo this block at some point in the future in a different color scheme and make all those interior triangles the same. So the black and white triangles, I laid those out. There are 8 the same, 8 that start with white and go to dark, and 8 that start with dark and go to white. And I cut out strips in the exact sizes that I needed to complete all 16 of these black and white triangles. Now, if you think making this giant block is too big, you can just take some paper, draw some triangles yourself, and create it your own way. Don't be afraid to try it and just see what happens. Once I had all the strips cut out and everything stacked up in a nice, neat pile, okay, well, maybe it's not that neat. Anyway, it's time to take it to the sewing machine and start sewing strips together. I'm going to take a dark blue strip and a light blue strip. I'm going to place them right sides together. Then I'm going to place my pattern so I can see the lines, and I'm going to put those, make sure that stitch line is right where it needs to be, so that when I open this up, when I stitch the seam and then open up these two pieces of fabric, they'll be in the right place. And I'm going to stitch on the line on the pattern using a 1.8 stitch length or less. I will keep adding strips and stitching on the line on my pattern until the entire triangle is covered. After each addition, I trim away excess bulk and I use my iron to press that seam open. If you're using a lighter fabric and a darker fabric, you can hold the pattern up to the light and you'll be able to see on the back where these are overlapping the stitch line. With all the strips attached to my triangle pattern, I went ahead and went around this triangle and trimmed on the dotted line, which is my seam allowance. The solid line is the sew line, the dotted line is the seam allowance. Now on the rest of these, I'm going to use my cutting mat and a nice big ruler to make sure I'm not making any mistakes with my trimming of these pieces. I completed all 4 of the blue triangles with the alternating dark blue and light blue. Next, I started in on the black and white triangles. Now remember, 8 of these triangles are starting with the biggest section white, then moving light, dark, light, dark. The other 8 are starting with dark and going dark, light, dark, light. Once I was done with that, I took all these pieces to my cutting mat and used a ruler to trim everything on the dotted line. All of these triangles have a few notches, which I'm also trimming off. That makes it easier to line up pieces together. Now at this point, I decided I didn't want to do it exactly like the pattern showed. The pattern shows all these triangles starting with dark as the largest strip. I'm going to change 2 of these, as I'm going to show you, and have the largest strip be light. Now I could have just taped the pattern where the stitch lines were, gently removed it from the triangle and started a whole new triangle. But I didn't want to waste that whole big triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tape, but I am going to use what I already have and just add that largest light blue strip on one side, and everything else will be there for me. So all I had to do was match up the stitch lines with the line I stitched. So I can see the thread, I can see the stitch line through the fabric, and I just line those up and put clips in this to hold it together. And then the last thing I did was stitch on that light blue for the largest strip. I put that light blue strip right sides together with the dark blue strip. I stitched on that stitch line, and then I trimmed off the excess and cut that triangle back down. So you can see why I did this. Instead of having a whole triangle to put in my scrap bin, I only have these two little strips that you see on the left to put in my scrap bin. After I stitched on those light blue pieces, I took these two triangles back to the cutting mat and trimmed them back down. Once all the triangles were trimmed, I decided to lay out my block. Now we're making 4 separate blocks, then we'll be putting each block together. Now this block goes together pretty logically. I didn't feel like I needed to keep that paper on to match seams. I think I'll do just fine. So I went ahead and removed all the paper from all the triangles. Now keep in mind, when you're removing foundation paper pieced paper, be very gentle when you remove it. Remember that small stitch length makes it perforated, so it should tear off pretty easily. You don't want to stretch out your seams or rip out your seams. To put this block together, I'm going to be stitching 2 of the black and white triangles together, and then 2 more of the black and white triangles together, and then those 2 triangles will be put together to complete, along with the blue triangle, they will complete a finished square. So I am placing the joined 4 black and white triangles right sides together with the blue triangle. I'm folding and pressing with my fingers the center mark on the blue block, the blue triangle. That's going to give me a line that I can use to match the center seam on the black and white section. Since this piece is getting a little large, I decided to go ahead and use clips along the whole length of the seam to hold everything together until I could stitch it. And here we have the finished 12-inch block. We'll put 4 of these blocks together to make a giant 24-inch block. I really like the way this block turned out, and I do want to make it just like my pattern shows, in a different colorway, and make a lovely child's quilt. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had fun, and I hope to see you back again real soon.